Experience!
This is a fantasy football update for Monday, November 4th. Pickups, injuries, and Monday Night Football preview. Smash a like and sub to the channel. Well, you are here. Thank you very much for that. And the free Mayo Media newsletter gets sent out and updated on Sunday evening, and it gets updated all the way through waivers. That cheat sheet is down in the show notes. If you want to check it out and not watch the video or listen to the podcast, you can just click on that and boom, you can be on your way. I suggest you watch, though, because we're going to start with Monday Night Football with the injuries. Tampa Bay is a 9-point underdog in Kansas City. Sterling Shepard and Jalen McMillan are both questionable for this game. McMillan almost certainly will play. Sterling Shepard still up in the air. A lot of limited practices throughout the course of the week, but hamstring injuries usually do keep players out for at least a week. So we'll see what happens with Sterling Shepard. Not that you really want to fire up Sterling Shepard in this spot. I do like McMillan more than Trey Palmer in the receiving game this week, just for upside purposes, but obviously no floor. The running backs in the receiving game are probably where you want to go on the Tampa Bay side of the ball. On Kansas City, Juju is out, and we'll see what happens with their smorgasbord of receivers right now, the carousel that they're playing. So let's get to the underdog picks for Monday Night Football. One of the big things you can do with underdog, the biggest place you can take advantage, is when injuries just pop up. And that's what we did on Sunday and Saturday, for that matter. Once we heard that Zeke was out, boom, fire up some Rico Dowdle, receiving yards, and that one hit. I gave this out on Twitter on Sunday morning once that Brian Robinson was officially ruled out around 11:35 a.m. Eastern time, because all of a sudden, Austin Eckler is going to be on the field. They're going to throw him the ball. So boom, we win a 10x on Sunday morning, which is always very nice. 4 running back receiving hires all worked out. So let's try to build on that for Monday Night Football and run it back with another 10x. If you use code Mayo right now at Underdog, not only will you get the deposit bonus of up to $1,000, you will also receive a free pick for the game featuring Patrick Mahomes. So you can add the Patrick Mahomes free pick to these 4 and turn it into 20-1 instead of 10-1. I would highly suggest that you do that if you're thinking about getting in the underdog street. So the plays for Monday Night Football: Mecole Hardman Jr., higher than 7.5 receiving yards. I also have Samaje Perine higher than 7.5 receiving yards on the same side. Basically, we're just attacking some of the very low totals and going higher on those in a game where if Tampa Bay, despite being 9-point underdogs, can push the pace passing the ball just a little bit, then these guys should get there no problem, as long as they're a part of the rotation. It's not just 500 Kareem Hunt rushes. Also have Xavier Worthy higher than 7.5 fantasy points. We know that he has a high ADOT. They're going to look for him down the field, plus they're going to get him involved in bubble screens, and they're using him more and more in the red zone as well. So those 3 Chiefs, they don't have to do much, just a little bit to hit their hires. Then on the other side of the ball, I already mentioned the running backs in the receiving game for Tampa Bay. Rachaad White higher than 23.5 receiving yards. Obviously, he's still a part of the 3-back rotation with Bucky Irving and Sean Tucker. But when we're thinking about third downs, passing situations, the past 2 weeks since they've started using this 3-back rotation without Evans and Godwin around, this is where Rachaad White has been used primarily. It's through the receiving game, and hopefully, as big underdogs, if they do fall behind, we'll be seeing an awful lot of Rachaad White in this game. Those 4 hit, you win 10 times your money. You add in the free pick if you are a new player and use code Mayo, and you win 20 times your money. So I suggest you get in on that right now. Running back injuries from week number 9. There wasn't an awful lot going on, especially in game. Jonathan Taylor got banged up on Sunday Night Football, but he returned to the game, so he's going to be fine. Other than that, Zach Moss and Jamal Williams both missed the game. Zach Moss has a neck injury, not sure how serious it is, but we saw in his absence Chase Brown do everything, basically play every snap and be an absolute fantasy stud. They don't get to play the Raiders every single week, but where this is a short week for them on Thursday Night Football, I wouldn't expect Zach Moss to be back unless he practices in full on Tuesday. So obviously with a lot of this stuff, it's going to be watch out for the practice reports throughout the course of the week. Zeke missed the game with disciplinary reasons. Dowdle played a ton in that game, was actually quite good. And we'll get to more Dallas here in a second. Jonathan Brooks did miss the game, but is expected to be activated for the Munich game in week 10, which will just throw a wrench into Chuba Hubbard against the Giants. Tajay Spears missed the game. Keaton Mitchell missed the game. And Christian McCaffrey is tentatively expected to return return this week against the Bucks, but once again, we'll see how that goes. Jordan Mason was dealing with that shoulder injury. He should be good to go as well for week number 10. So McCaffrey's going to make the first run of the rankings, which you can get sent directly to you on Wednesday afternoon if you sub to the free Mayo Media newsletter. So hit that along with all of the pickups you can find right now in the cheat sheet in the show notes. Not really much has changed from the past week in terms of running back pickups. Jaylen Warren remains number one. There's a real dearth of good options to pick up from the waiver wire. If you don't have a running back right now and you have to go pick someone up, there's not really anyone there. It's Warren, Ray Davis, Zach Charbonnet has finally fallen below the 50% threshold on Yahoo in terms of pickup. So he's number 3. Jerome Ford, Blake Corum, Braylon Allen, Tyler Algier. It is just a bunch of backups. Warren is the only one on this list you can kind of plug and play as a low-end flex, but even then, if the Steelers get out to a big lead, they tend to rely on Najee more in that circumstance than having to pass to Warren, but he should be good to play 40-ish, 30 to 40% of the snaps in Pittsburgh. And obviously the whole key with these guys is if something happens to the starter, then they become wildly playable. Until then, they're just bench fodder for the moment. There was a lack of injuries at running back in week 9, but like every single week, giant big name receivers who you use every week go down. We have Drake London with a hip pointer. He is expected to be okay despite leaving that game against Dallas. They anticipate him being ready for week number 10. A.J. Brown, not so much. We already saw him get hurt earlier in the year. He left with a knee injury. It's likely he misses week 10, and that derails the entire Philly offense. At least that's what we saw earlier in the year when he was out. They just could not get on the same page. He is the guy that makes this offense move and allow them to establish as much running as possible with Barkley and Hurts, and even opens up Devonta Smith in that spot. So be wary of A.J. Brown. Look for alternative options for him. Probably not Jahan Dotson. Wouldn't go down that route. Chris Olave sustained another concussion, was carted off the field. He might go on injured reserve, and the Saints are really lacking anyone to throw to with Shaheed already on injured reserve. Would not expect Olave to play anytime in the near future. I could be wrong about that. He could be back next week. Wouldn't anticipate that happening. Cedric Wilson and Tipton would be the two guys that you could maybe go to on the Saints, but if they couldn't get anything going against the Panthers, it is unlikely that they're going to be any good at all. It's probably Wilson over Tipton at this point, but you need to be strained in order to play these guys in your lineups in week number 10. CeeDee Lamb exited the game with a shoulder injury. They did bring him back for a 2-point conversion for reasons unknown. I don't quite understand what they were doing there, but without Dak, there's a chance that the Cowboys just try to preserve their superstars and that we don't see CeeDee Lamb. He's going for an MRI on Monday, so we'll have more information about him as the week goes along. Amari Cooper did not play with a wrist injury. Ditto for Gabe Davis. T. Higgins missed the game with a quad injury against Vegas. Again, they play on Thursday Night Football, so unless he can practice in full on Tuesday, it is unlikely once again that T. Higgins plays against the Ravens, which means Mike Gesicki is where you want to turn to because Eric All Jr. is now out for the season with a knee injury. So there's more Gesicki. We've seen Gesicki step into the Higgins role every time that Higgins has been out. You'd think it would be Yoshivas, who's been fine, but he doesn't play the same role as T. Higgins. They allot that for Mike Gesicki when Higgins is out. So Higgins becomes a top 10 tight end option who is still widely available coming off of a 2-touchdown game on Thursday Night Football against the Ravens. DK Metcalf missed the game. Now Seattle goes on bye week, so you weren't going to have him this week anyway. Jamison Williams will return from his PED suspension. He missed his 2 games. Allen Lazard will be placed on injured reserve, it looks like, and Adam Thielen missed the game for the Carolina Panthers as well. No word yet on whether or not he's going to end up playing in Munich. For the wide receiver pickups, number 1 is Jerry Jeudy. Everyone went and picked up Cedric Tillman. Cedric Tillman got there late against the Chargers, but once again, it was Jerry Jeudy who led that team in targets. I'm frankly surprised he's below the 50% threshold, but there he is. He's the number 1 pickup at wide receiver, and he is a guy that you can play as a top 36 option with Jameis at quarterback. Demario Douglas at number 2, who's been fine every time that Drake May plays. And Drake May is playing, so play Demario Douglas. Jalen McMillan at 3, Keon Coleman, Xavier Legette, who did hurt his wrist, but ended up being fine in that Saints and Panthers game. Keep an eye on the injury report just in case it gets worse throughout the course of the week and the inflammation comes up, and they go on bye, obviously, after playing in Germany, so they might want to keep him out. But with Bryce Young at quarterback, no Deontay Johnson, Legette is where you want to look at in the Panthers offense. If you're looking at the Panthers offense, where I wouldn't begrudge you if you did not look at the the Panthers offense to try to mine any sort of fantasy value. Quentin Johnson returned, scored a 66-yard touchdown for the Chargers, but they do spread the ball out so much. He's not reliable as a floor basis. A lot of upside, though, because all dude does is catch touchdowns. Parker Washington, Ricky Bullets, and then Jalen Coker coming in at number 9. Got a bit too hyped for Jalen Coker against the Saints in Week 9. Ended up with just over 35 yards. So he's fine. Not great, but this is where we're at with the Panthers offense right now. At tight end, we had Noah Fant missing the week. Ditto for Dallas Goedert. Goedert could return from his hamstring injury, and they might try to get him back a little bit quicker if they're down A.J. Brown for this game. So if you were playing Grant Calcaterra, well, that was a fun run. Now you can probably drop him and go replay Dallas Goedert in this spot. Eric All Jr., as mentioned, is going to miss the rest of the season with his knee injury, so more snaps for Mike Gesicki and Drew Sample in the Bengals offense. For pickups, a lot like Demario Douglas, Hunter Henry is number 1 at the tight end position. When Drake May plays, Hunter Henry gets a ton of targets, and he's averaging over 3 catches a game in that spot, so he's the number 1. Gesicki is number 2 because he's probably just a plug-and-play once again for this week, because when Higgins comes back, it's not that he loses all value, it's just he loses this role that he has in the Bengals offense, so he just wouldn't be reliable week to week, where Hunter Henry would be in that spot. So I'd go Henry over Gesicki, although I might rank Gesicki over Henry for week number 10. The longer term play here is Hunter Henry. Taysom Hill at 3, Zach Ertz, Tyler Conklin, Jonnu Smith. If you are in absolute dire straits at tight end, maybe you can play those guys. Henry is I wouldn't say a must pickup because you might have a better tight end, but he is a good pickup. Gesicki is a good plug and play. The rest are just, roll the dice, see what happens at tight end. At quarterback, Dak Prescott hurt his hamstring. He's probably going to miss some time. So Cooper Rush is going to be starting for the Dallas Cowboys. Not that they were doing anything anyway, but at least Dak was throwing to CeeDee Lamb every time. And he finally started to use his legs. Maybe this is why he doesn't run so much, because he hurts his hamstring, apparently, if he tries to run more than once throughout the course of the game. But I don't expect him to play in week number 10. Caleb Williams should be able to play. He hurt his ankle on the final drive in garbage time against the Arizona Cardinals. And the greatest thing about Caleb Williams in this game was on that final play of the game, I needed 6 yards to win another underdog entry, and he had 5 yards to Keenan Allen to come up a half yard short of his total of 216.5. But hey, guess what? Stat correction in my favor. There we go. Caleb Williams, 217 passing yards, cashes a beautiful 6-1 for him. So a hero is Caleb Williams in my estimation right now, but he's probably going to play this week, so that's good news. You can probably end up playing him this week. If you're, he's not a top 10 quarterback. He's probably in that 12 to 20 range, depending on the matchups each week, but he's still in play, although the running might be down a little bit from Caleb Williams, but he should be under center for the Chicago Bears. Will Levis again missed the game this week against the Patriots, which they won in overtime with Mason Rudolph. Levis should be okay to go this week. We'll see if they end up inserting him back as the starter at this point, because Mason Rudolph, while isn't good, but he's not objectively horrible as well, where Levis can be from time to time. I do anticipate Levis starting again, but you probably don't want to play Will Levis. These are some guys that you can play if you do need a quarterback. The streamers for the week, number 1 is Daniel Jones in Munich against the Panthers. The dude threw for 0 yards in the first half and still had a good fantasy game against Washington. He's kind of involved in everything they do, because when they get near the goal line, he still might call his own number, which is very valuable from a fantasy perspective. Aaron Rodgers at number 2 at Arizona. It's a nice spot, and he's starting to develop that connection with Wilson and Adams both at the same time. They're passing a ton, and they're coming off 10 days rest. Arizona, maybe not the elite defense they looked like against the Bears on Sunday either. Just keep that in mind. They have won 3 in a row, though. Drake May is at Chicago. Chicago's defense did not look awesome. It is a lot better than anticipated, but Drake May almost put up 100 yards rushing against the Titans. And the Titans' defense isn't horrible. It's not as good as Chicago's, but it's not incredibly bad either. So when he's calling his own number, it's kind of like the Daniel Jones situation. Makes for a very good streamer in the spot. Bo Nix at Kansas City, Joe Flacco at home against Buffalo are 2 options as well. Much prefer the other 3 in this spot. Finally, if you're looking for a defense to play, the Giants, again in Munich against Carolina, are probably where you want to be. A ton of pressure being generated, although the back end of the defense isn't very good. I do not expect Bryce Young, who has not yet been named the starter for Carolina in this game, but he's just not thrown over the top of your defense. So I really like the Giants as a streamable D. This week, Washington at home against Pittsburgh. If they can get into the backfield against Russell Wilson, this will be a big test for him. We saw the Giants get all over him, although he was able to overcome it. I'm interested to see if Washington can do the same thing, because offensively, we know that Washington can keep up on the scoreboard far more than the Giants can, and then force Russ into these bad spots, and then they can go attack him. So they're number 2. Atlanta at New Orleans, because New Orleans is looking like a dead fish at the moment. And then Detroit at Houston. Houston can't block right now. We'll see if Nico Collins returns. I don't expect him to be back this week, but there's a chance he could, because I think this is his 4th week. He can come back off of IR, so keep an eye on his practice report, but maybe throughout the 10 days, Houston was able to get something on the go, but if they fall behind in this game, Stroud might have to drop back and pass 50 times with like me blocking for him at offensive line, which is not a good situation. The Jets have a better pass rush than the Lions do, but the Lions can still get back there and harass CJ Stroud, so keep an eye on them. They're weirdly, wildly unowned at the moment, and here we are. They always play in a good spot. Well, they might not be the best defense or the best attacking defense. They do tend to lead in a lot of these games, which forces the other team to pass against them. And as we know, when you're looking for a streaming D and looking for upside, you want to face pass attempts against. That leads to sacks, that leads to pressures, that leads to bad decisions, potentially, which could be bonanza points on the other end. Plus, the Detroit special teams is quite good. Khalif Raymond is quite good, and you might just sneak off a return touchdown in one of these games as well. Again, all of this information is available in the Mayo Media newsletter cheat sheet. The link is down in the show notes right now if you want to go check it, and I update it when the injuries start to get updated on Monday and Tuesday. Then the fresh one comes out on Wednesday. All right? We'll see you tomorrow.
Mayo experience! Experience!